Okay, I'm going to be doing this video. It's about depression. It's a topic that is very interesting to me because I think it fits into the category of most important thing that is least talked about. I think most of the Spurgs out there, they're all depressed, or they should be. If you have an anime icon as your avatar, you should be depressed. Most people don't talk about it because there's shame involved in it. They're definitely not going to say it publicly, even privately. It's a double whammy. A lot of people aren't going to confess this to their closest friends or family because they're afraid they'll be looked at as broken and weak or pathetic even. And publicly, there's all sorts of social constraints that would lead you to believe this is not beneficial to me, to openly be attached to mental illness. And even that phrase, to call depression mental illness, is ridiculous. The connotation is that you are sick in the brain. You're not. Depression is absolutely normal. What's not normal is if you go through life without depression. That's called being a zombie or being on drugs or just being catatonic. You're not doing it right. You're supposed to have ups and downs. The trick is, when you do have your downs, figure out what they are and minimize the time you spend down low, and then work your way up back to neutrality and then up off to the races into the positive realm. So here's a video. I don't know if it's good or bad. It's from Now This, and it's called What If Everything You Know About Depression Was Wrong? So this is not me saying this guy's stupid or whatever. I haven't watched the video yet, but I tend to agree. There's a lot spoken about depression that is wrong, including what is considered mainstream clinical analysis. You know, they're trying to label everything. They're trying to figure out which pill can we use to solve this. They're all over the place. And history is not going to treat this period of time in how we are dealing with mental illness with kindness. This period will be known as the Dark Ages. I mean, don't get me wrong, it used to be worse. You know, we thought everybody was bonkers. You're crazy. Hey, the kid's gay. He's a little bit off. He's different. Oh, okay, he's crazy. You know, but slowly we learn. We become a little bit more sophisticated in our understanding of what exactly is wrong with someone. You can't just lump them in and be like, okay, he's nuts. Bye-bye. So let's take a look.
You're not crazy.
Well, he's not talking to Norman Bates here.
Your pain is not a pathology. Your pain makes sense. We are depressed and anxious in this culture for perfectly good reasons. We are living in a culture that does not meet our basic needs for connection.
I don't think the culture's supposed to meet your basic needs, so I take a little issue there. I think you need to meet your own basic needs. The culture can help. I mean, it's engineered to do so. But stop looking for answers and quick fixes. You have to take the initiative. It's your responsibility. And yeah, as far as the pain thing, it's normal to feel pain, and there's a reason you feel pain. It's not random. That's probably the first thing to realize. You're not depressed for no reason. The trick is figure out the reason. That can be easier said than done, however. The people who are really in a hole are the people who say, I'm depressed and I don't know why.
For meaning, for purpose, for a sense of the future.
This guy looks like a magician you would rent for a child's party.
And that is the key reason why we're depressed. 1 in 5 Americans will take a psychiatric drug in their lifetime. And I began to think, could it really just be that there's something going wrong in our brains? So I went on this huge journey over 40,000 miles. I interviewed the leading scientists.
Please do not brag about the mileage it takes to fly across the pond. Everybody does this. I've done it millions of times. It's not like you rode this.
In the world. And when I was a teenager, until I went to my doctor, I had thought my depression was all in my head.
It is in your head, but I mean, it is real. But yeah, it does come from your head.
Meaning, it was a sign of weakness, it was shameful. It's not in our heads. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, you're not crazy. You're a human being with unmet needs.
Yeah, and I agree. And it's almost a backfiring mechanism of how narcissistic we are as kids, or when we're young, where you think the stuff that happens to you is special, different. You're entitled. You own the world. You're immortal. So when you fall in love for the first time, oh, wow, these are new emotions. These are powerful. And it means so much. Oh, that breakup? Oh my God, you have no idea the pain. No idea. Nobody understands how in love I was and how painful it was to break up with her. It's unique to me. So that's the general default mindset of young people. And so when things go wrong and you are feeling shame or guilt or are depressed for whatever reason it is, again, the mindset is nobody understands my pain, my misery. Meanwhile, everybody else has gone through this. And there is wisdom out there, either sitting in books or sitting in my brain, which you can please feel free to utilize for your own benefit, that you can take advantage of that stuff and not suffer any longer than you need to.
I started researching what really causes depression and what really solves it for my book Lost Connections for a really personal reason. One was, why was I still depressed? When I was a teenager, I'd gone to my doctor and I'd explained that I had this.
I think this guy's gay, and he's not really being out and about it. So I don't know, it's weird for me. Like, could you please just state that you're gay so I can put that to rest, please? Thank you.
Feeling like pain was leaking out of me. I couldn't control
I think that has something to do with your prostate.
it. I couldn't regulate it. And my doctor told me this story. He said, oh, we know why you feel this way. There's this chemical called serotonin in people's brains. You're clearly lacking it.
Yeah, and that's just a really blunt and demented way. By the way, why are there Chinese characters on this? I think that's your first problem. What were you doing in China? Oh, and why does that image of the brain look like the Pepsi logo?
You're clearly lacking it. We'll give you these drugs, you'll feel better. So I started taking them. I felt an immediate boost. I felt much better. Within a couple of months, this kind of pain started to bleed back through. So I went back, he gave me a higher dose. Again, felt a boost. Again, the pain came back, gave me a higher dose. In the end, I was taking the maximum possible dose for 13 years.
Jesus Christ. So this guy learned the hard way. And yeah, taking pills to solve these problems is not the way to go. And humans are really good at putting on Band-Aids and not addressing the core problem, either because they don't know how to, they don't have a solution, they can't fix it, but also because life goes on and they have to limp to the finish line. So if it's not through taking pills that are prescribed to you, people will get into gaming, like heavily into gaming, or drugs, or sex, or any kind of distraction. And they do that because that is a form of self-medicating, and it's a way to distract your mind from the pain and agony and whatever it is that's bothering you. It's a self-defense mechanism, and it works, sadly. It works in the short term. Ultimately, it isn't a good solution.
And at the end of that, I still felt terrible. For the next 13 years, I thought it was, all in my head, meaning it was a chemical imbalance. Actually, what I learned is it's mostly not in our heads. There are biological factors that can make it worse. But actually, there are 9 factors in the way we're living, 7 of which are kind of things in our psychology and our environment that are making us depressed and anxious.
Yep, that's true. This guy sounds like he's like a self-help guy trying to sell a book, but yeah, we're social creatures. We need to be touched. We need to be engaged with. The problem is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're depressed, you don't feel like going out and being social, and also nobody wants to be social with you because you're a drag, which makes you more depressed, etc.
For example, if you're really lonely, you're much more likely to become depressed. If you feel controlled at work.
Isn't that literally the definition of work? You're being controlled by someone who pays you to do what they want.
You're much more likely to become depressed. If you don't feel you have a sense of the future ahead of you, you're much more likely to become depressed.
Yeah, and I'd say that's really, he stumbled across a big one, which is having hope, optimism, plans for the future. That is key. We are kinetic beings. We do not stand in one place. We must be moving constantly. And we have to have that positive momentum as we go through life. The cause of most people's depression is not looking towards the future, and it's not even problems that they're experiencing in the present. It's usually issues from the past that have never been resolved, which makes you in the present moment sort of be in this continual state of buffering. You are psychologically buffering, okay? You don't have the RAM to deal with, oh, well, yeah, wait a minute, that priest was fingering me, and wait, I just went through a vicious breakup and I feel worthless, and oh yeah, I'm estranged from my parents and I feel shame for that, and I killed that homeless man in 1995, and I'm not sure if I should have done that. I mean, nobody misses him. I mean, I probably did the society a favor, but I mean, still, it's bothering me. So you have to refresh, restart, Control-Alt-Delete. You've got to find a way to flush or process, deal with everything in your past so that you give yourself a chance at being at peace with the moment and also being excited and positive about the future.
If you don't get to see the natural world, you're much more likely to become depressed. There had been a farmer in their community who one day had stood on a landmine in the rice fields where he worked, and his leg was blown off.
I'm sorry, that's not funny. Oh my God, it is funny though. Oh my God, his leg was blown off and he was depressed. What's up with this guy's shirt? Does this guy have just bullet wounds in his back? What is that about? Is that a style?
And they took him to hospital, they gave him an artificial limb, and he went back to work in the rice fields. But apparently it's super painful to work in rice fields when you've got an artificial limb. They explained they went and sat with him. They listened to him. They realised that his pain made sense. They figured out, well, he's depressed for perfectly obvious reasons. They realised if they bought him a cow he could become a dairy farmer. He wouldn't have to go into the situation where he was so depressed. So they bought him a cow. Within a few weeks, he stopped crying. He was fine again.
Have we entertained the idea that maybe he was having sex with a cow?
They said to Derek, "So you see, doctor, that cow was an antidepressant. And while certainly chemical antidepressants have some value and should remain on the table, we need to radically expand the menu of options for people who are depressed and anxious to actually deal with the deep underlying reasons why we feel this way."
Very true. I agree completely. This is what I've been saying. More cows for everyone.
We need to learn the lesson of the cow. There was a prison in Michigan, the state prison, that looks out, just by coincidence, they didn't design it this way. One part looks out over concrete, one part looks out over green space. When they studied this, they found that the people who looked out over green space had 23% fewer mental health problems than the people who looked out over concrete.
I'm not sure doing studies on the depression of people in jail is that worthwhile. Shouldn't everybody be kind of depressed if you're in jail?
There is loads of evidence that exposure to the natural world reduces depression and anxiety, and being deprived of it makes us more and more anxious. We're like animals in the zoo. We're like creatures in captivity. We've been deprived of our habitat, and it's one of the key reasons why we feel so bad.
Yeah, I agree. And, physical exercise, just engaging your biology. So yeah, going out into nature, but also getting outside of your head, outside of your world and your problems. I mean, imagine how many people there are. I'm walking around Buenos Aires. There's millions of people in this city. Millions! They all have their own problems and stories and quirks. And they're all these human beings that you and I will never get to meet. But you could, and it's just this idea of, look, if you make the conscious decision to engage in life, we all know you have your problems, but you can also be a positive force in the world. And it can just be minor. It could be smiling at someone. It could be listening to someone else, doing something nice for go out there, be in the world. And by the way, it is selfish. That's the hidden secret of the whole thing. You doing something nice for someone else actually benefits you. So for all of those reasons, it's a good thing to do.
This amazing doctor called Dr. Vincent Felitti in San Diego
Pronounced San Diego.
has made a breakthrough in how we understand depression and anxiety in the mid-1980s in a slightly weird way. So he starts working with people who are extremely obese, like more than 400 pounds. And one day he had this kind of, what seems like a stupid idea, right? He was like, what would happen if they just stopped eating and we medically supervised them, we gave them vitamins and nutrients? Would they just lose weight? They started doing this, obviously, with a huge amount of medical supervision. And the crazy thing is, it turned out it worked. They did, in fact, lose loads of weight. They went from being 400 pounds to, in the case of one woman who I'm going to call Susan, 138 pounds. But then something happened that no one expected, which led to a breakthrough when it comes to depression.
She saw her feet.
I'll give you an example from this woman, Susan. One day, she just freaked out. She got down to a healthy weight. She freaked out and just started stuffing her face and started going back to a really unhealthy weight. And Dr. Felitti sat with her and was like, well, what happened? Something had happened to her that hadn't happened to her in years. A man had hit on her, and it had really freaked her out. So he started to say to Susan, well, Susan, when did you start to put on weight? It was when she was 11. He said, well, did anything happen when you were 11 that didn't happen when you were 9 or 14? She said, yeah, that's when my grandfather started to rape me.
Oh my God, that's dirty. Grandfather rape? Hold on, let me Google that. See what I can find. I'm going to do an image search just because I'm a visual kind of guy. Grandfather rape. Let's see what we got here. I'm seeing a lot of pictures of Muslims. Like a lot of Muslims in this. Wow. Nothing too graphic, which I'm kind of disappointed by, weirdly. Oh my God. There's a creepy picture of just this old man's hand with a young woman's hand. Oh my God. Okay. That was a dark little tangent.
That's when Dr. Felitti discovered something. 55% of people in this program had been sexually abused and had started to put on weight in the wake of their sexual abuse. It turned out this thing that looked so irrational, their obesity, actually was perfectly rational. As Susan put it, overweight is overlooked, and that's what I needed to be.
Yeah, I could see some logic to that, but the problem with obesity, I think, is way bigger than sexual abuse.
A lot of the depression we're talking about is not caused by some spontaneous chemical imbalance in people's brains. It's caused by deep pain and grief in their childhood.
Exactly. He's got it. This is the kind of wisdom that only someone who has been through depression can understand. He has been through depression, so have I. But we've come out from the other side. And yes, blaming it on, oh, there's a chemical imbalance, or oh, it's genetic, I can't do anything about it. I'll just take these pills and not worry about it. Yeah, that is an excuse to avoid grappling with whatever horrible thing lurks in your subconscious. In fact, you could almost generalize it to this. Let's say you have a problem. Your problem is you are thirsty, you reach for your bottle of water, it's empty. There's no more water in it. And you're like, oh my God, I am so depressed about it. No, you wouldn't be depressed about that. You know why? Because it's a problem that you know you can fix. You could get up, fill it up, boom, you have water. Problem solved. Usually depression comes from either an accumulation of so many problems that all of them, when addressed as a whole, it seems this is too many problems for me to have. I can't address them all. I'm just going to be saddled with these problems. Life sucks. I'm depressed. Or maybe just one or two major problems that are not easily solved. For example, like he's talking about, your grandfather raped you. You can't just solve that. You can't just snap your fingers and be completely cool with that. So your choices are go into therapy, talk about it, read books, figure out what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, figure out ways in which you can maybe overcome this over a period of time. Or you could ignore it, bury it deep. This is what the Irish do, this is what the Catholics do. Pretend it didn't happen, put it in a lockbox, throw away the key. Part of that makes sense. Who wants to deal with the most unpleasant things imaginable? Death, shame, guilt, fear, horror, whatever effed up thing happened to you or that you did. It haunts you. You avoid it for a reason. And ironically, you facing it by shining a light on it, by openly and honestly addressing it, dealing with it, is the way to overcome it. You have to have faith in yourself. You have to bet on yourself that you can overcome the thing you're avoiding.
And Dr. Felitti showed that if you give people a context where they can talk about this and they can see that they will not be judged, it leads to a really significant fall in depression and anxiety. The reason I found this so difficult is because when I was a child, I had experienced some quite extreme acts of violence. And I realised, I think one of the reasons why I clung for so long to this theory that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance is because I didn't want to think about that. I didn't want the anger that comes with that. But one of the things I would most want to say to anyone who's in that position is don't be afraid. You won't be judged if you talk to the right people, and you can release the shame that you carry for this, which you shouldn't have. This should never have happened to you. You can actually experience a real reduction in depression and anxiety. You don't have to carry this with you. Don't believe the people who tell you that if you're depressed and anxious, you're just biologically broken. That will add to your shame. You deserve more love and more compassion, not less.
Well done. Well done. That's a guy trying to help people. I appreciate that. That's a good message. At the end there, he was trying to say, I guess he's specifically talking about people who have had traumatic things happen in their past, but it wasn't their fault. And there's tons of people like that. I think it gets even more trickier when the things in your past were your fault. So let's say, we talk about the rape victims. What if you raped someone? It almost makes it harder for you to address that, because guess who the boogeyman is? When you start rifling through your memories and figuring out, okay, why am I feeling all these bad things? Oh, that's right. I did a monstrous thing. I regret it. I hate myself. Self-loathing is a bad thing, but sometimes it could be justified. That's a wrestling match with you and yourself that you need to engage in, if that applies to you. You don't have to rape someone, or maybe it's something to a lesser degree, but it must be done. I mean, let's say you fell out of contact with a friend of yours and you wanted to write to them and you missed them and you felt a little guilty about sort of losing touch, and then that person died. They killed themselves, whatever it was. And you've been carrying with you this idea that you did something very wrong by letting that relationship drift. And you can't get it back, and you feel shame and you feel horrible about it. Now, you have to let that out and talk that over. Otherwise, you will suffer. And perhaps in the short term, you can distract yourself. You can bury that, not think about it. If it ever comes up, just move on to something else. We're pretty damn good at that. But the way life works, you don't just get one problem and then the rest of it is just a cakewalk. You get another problem and another and another. And you will begin to feel the burden and the weight of this multitude of things that are detracting from the quality of your life and making you feel depressed. Anyway, let me know what you think about it. And no, but for the anime icon people, they should be depressed, and there is no saving them. There's no help for that, and there's no pill. So you people really need to check yourself. Good night.